Welcome back. Now, today marks World Teachers' Day, a UNESCO-recognized day aimed at raising awareness, understanding and appreciation for the contribution that teachers make to education and development. Some studies have found that more South African teachers experience mental health issues and burnout as a result of pressures presented by the job. Let's discuss some of these challenges faced by teachers in the country and the possible solutions with NAPTOSA Executive Director Basil Manuel. Basil, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and happy World Teachers' Day to you and your members. And before we even get into the challenges, I want us to just talk about this noble profession and the role that teachers play in our society today.
Martha, thank you, and thank you for the congratulations, and let me convey that to the army out there that raises the nation, and to thank them for their yeoman service. Martha, the teaching profession is one where it is demanded of every person that enters it to be a multiplicity of things, from the simple teacher to the rearer of children, but also to be a policeman, to be the nurse, to be the social worker, to be many things to round off the life of a child. And that sometimes in circumstances that are not optimal. But we say thank you to those who still get up every morning, who still go to school, and who do it at great cost to themselves at times. So it's a good place to be. And South African teachers, as compared to the rest of Africa, are not completely in a bad space, but it could be much better.
Absolutely, it could. And you know, it was just on Friday leading up to World Teachers' Day that on the channel we spoke to two really incredible teachers. They were primary school teachers, and they were talking about what you're saying, you know, the different hats that they have to wear, from being a counselor to an administrator to a teacher, a parent. And sometimes, Basil, those pressures are quite overwhelming indeed, which leads to some of the challenges when it comes to the teaching profession. If you could list some of those challenges when it comes to teachers feeling run down, unsupported as well.
Mental health issues have been growing. And I think since COVID, we've seen many more, or rather our attention has been more greatly focused on both the child and the teachers that have to deal with these. Think of the teacher who has to deal with a child who is traumatized, takes that trauma onto themselves, and of course carries it home at times. And if there's no support for the teacher, that trauma never goes away. The teacher teaching in a difficult to teach area, racked by things like gang violence, etc., where children are traumatized daily, children are molested, children are robbed, children are threatened, even shot. And you think about places like the Cape Flats and many, many other areas. It is the teachers who keep the children together, who keep the children safe, sometimes at odds even with the parents, when parental support isn't always there. And not because parents don't want to. Sometimes parents can't support because they get up in the morning, they leave before their children leave for school, and they come back when the children are just about to go to bed. So the adult in the life of a child is the teacher, and the teacher has got to be there all the time. And that is why good teachers are the lifeblood of the nation. And when you add to that the pressure of just schooling, administration, teaching, the pressure of matric results and things like that, where people are spending an inordinate amount of time at school, where virtually every weekend, every holiday is spent, it's unhealthy and it is unsustainable. And that is why we continually call for a closer look at the mental health of our membership, of teachers as a whole, but also not forgetting children, because the children are going through a lot of trauma every day, and that adds to the burden of the teacher.
Yeah, and those mental health issues that you speak of just continue to compound as well. Studies also show that. A more recent study that was conducted by the University of Stellenbosch found that from their participants of that study, at least half of them were saying that in the next 10 years, they don't want to be in this profession anymore. If that's the case, and as we know with global studies, we need more teachers as well, how are we going to be able to retain teachers?
Martha, I've just returned from the African Union where we launched the Decade of Education. And whilst it was a very nice thing, it also pointed to the fact that we need 44 million teachers worldwide. At the moment, South Africa appears to have sufficient teachers. But as people feel run down, and let me say it's a wave. People feel down one day and they say, I need to get out. The next day, something good happens and they feel that they can continue for the next 20 years. But many teachers are feeling that the exit is much closer than what it should be. And if that happens, we end up with a cohort of teachers that sometimes doesn't have the possibility of learning from the experience of the older teacher, because that too is extremely important. They come with fresh ideas, but they also need to be shown some other things. And that creates a breakdown in the quality of the teacher you build. So what we want to do is to create a better space so the teachers stay longer and infuse the younger ones with all the good things and learn from the younger ones all these new things that are coming out. It's something where one can say the one hand must wash the other. And unless we have a model that does that, we get into trouble. You can't have a workforce that is too old, or you can't have a workforce that is only young. You have to have that happy mix. But that happy mix can only be created by creating better conditions for teachers. Teachers don't want to live in fear, in trauma. Look how many teachers have been killed at school, on the way to school, after school, have been injured, have been threatened, and so on. And I believe the threats are poorly recorded. They're far worse than we know. We've got to bring that down. We've got to take our schools back. We've got to get greater discipline, but it's about support. Support from parents, support from the authorities in the Department of Education. And I will say there are things that are tried, but sometimes they're not sustained.
And speaking about that support as well, whether it be from parents or also the government or civil society, there's also a big call for more attention in terms of the number of learners in a classroom, because that also adds to the pressures of teaching as well. But that's not in the purview of the teacher, and sometimes not even of the school itself. Who else needs to be coming to the fore to help with some of these challenges like overcrowding in schools?
Martha, it is a long story. It is a story that we've been fighting for a long time. We know it's about money because it is money that pay for teachers. And when the ratios improve, you are employing more teachers. But it is also about in the right places, because now I'm so pleased that the focus is shifting so that it is far more on our foundational levels. And it is in the foundation phase where you need smaller classes, where you need more one-on-one contact, where you can solve the problem of reading, of writing, of introducing mother tongue instruction even. If we get that right, then things start working. And we need money. We need government to come to the party. We need, of course, the community also to stand together to say we need to make our schools work and work better. So these elements that break into our schools and vandalize our schools, etc., the community can help us deal with that, because it is completely heartbreaking when you've just built up a beautiful classroom. You've got all the beautiful lesson aids that you need. And then somebody comes and just rips them up just because of wanton destruction. And if we don't have community, if we don't have government, if we don't have big business all contributing in a greater measure, we won't fix it. And we can't complain about things like reading. Reading is not an issue of saying, take out your books, let's read. No. It's a specialist. And that grade 1 teacher, and that grade 2 teacher, and that grade 3 teacher, they're miracle workers. And that miracle you see when that child can pick up a book and read boldly. It is not just that it happens automatically because somebody's standing there.
You know, when you're speaking about the vandalism as well, I want us, Basil, to talk about the conditions and the context that teachers are educating learners in. Every so often, we see a viral video on social media of a disturbing incident where there's violence whether it's the teacher permitting violence against the child or vice versa. And it seems that this seems to be a growing trend. Is it so that it's becoming more violent and dangerous for teachers and learners to be in the classroom?
We certainly have witnessed a number of incidents, and because they are recorded now on social media, it appears as though it is more. There is very little evidence that can firmly say, yes, it has increased. But certainly we are seeing more of it, which isn't a bad thing, because now we can see where the real problems lie. And the problems lie because our children come from communities where violence and then sorting out problems with violence is quite common. And so that is brought into the school. And then we see this playing out there. And that is why we say to our teachers, every union would say this, the Department of Education would say this, don't use acts of violence and then believe that the children won't in themselves do the same. So teachers mustn't be part of that. You then part of the problem and not the solution. But we are running the gauntlet in some areas, and some of our teachers are feeling terribly pressurized. Add to that toxic mix a large class, and then you have the recipe for a lot of chaos.